Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison had led SEAL operations for 12 years, and he'd never ordered a retreat from a mission that was still achievable. But when enemy forces surrounded his 8-man team with superior numbers, heavy weapons and air support that made their position untenable, Morrison made the hardest decision of his career. All units, execute tactical withdrawal to extraction point Bravo. His team began their fighting retreat through hostile territory, following doctrine that prioritized survival over mission completion when odds became impossible. But Petty Officer First Class Rachel "Ghost" Valdez wasn't following anyone. While her teammates moved toward safety, she was moving toward the enemy command center where 2 enemy generals were coordinating the operation that had her brothers pinned down. What happened over the next 47 minutes would rewrite SEAL tactical doctrine and prove that sometimes the most successful operations begin when someone refuses to accept retreat as an option. The mission had started as routine reconnaissance of enemy positions in the contested territory along the Syrian-Iraqi border. Intelligence reports indicated increased enemy activity in the region, with suspected high-value targets coordinating operations against coalition forces from a fortified compound that served as a regional command center. SEAL Team 7 had been inserted via helicopter at 0200 hours, 40 kilometers from their objective, to conduct surveillance and gather intelligence on enemy leadership structure. The team consisted of 8 operators, Lieutenant Commander Morrison as team leader, Chief Petty Officer Williams as assistant team leader, and 6 petty officers including Rachel Valdez, whose specialty in reconnaissance and target identification had made her invaluable for intelligence gathering missions. The insertion had proceeded without incident. The team moved through mountainous terrain using night vision equipment and GPS navigation that allowed them to reach their observation position before dawn. Their hide site provided excellent visibility of the target compound, while offering concealment that should have allowed extended surveillance without detection. Rachel had established the primary observation post using advanced optical equipment that provided detailed views of enemy personnel, vehicle movements, and facility layout. Her intelligence training allowed her to identify key personnel and assess the compound's defensive capabilities with accuracy that would inform future operations planning. For 6 hours, the team documented enemy activities that confirmed the presence of significant leadership elements. Rachel's observations identified what appeared to be 2 high-ranking officers coordinating with subordinate commanders in activities that suggested preparation for major offensive operations against American positions. The situation deteriorated rapidly when an enemy patrol discovered tracks left by the SEAL team during their approach. What should have remained an undetected surveillance mission became a fighting withdrawal as enemy forces mobilized to locate and eliminate the American reconnaissance element. Morrison's tactical assessment was immediate and decisive. Enemy reaction forces were converging from multiple directions with numbers and equipment that exceeded his team's capability to engage successfully. Standard SEAL doctrine emphasized mission completion when possible, but survival took priority when tactical situations became untenable. "All units, we've been compromised," Morrison announced over the team radio network. "Enemy forces are mobilizing for search and destroy operation. We're initiating tactical withdrawal to extraction point Bravo." The withdrawal began immediately, with team members moving in tactical formation that provided security while allowing rapid movement toward the designated helicopter landing zone. Morrison coordinated with air assets to arrange emergency extraction that would remove his team before enemy forces could intercept them. Rachel moved with her teammates initially, but her attention remained focused on the enemy compound where her surveillance had identified the 2 high-value targets. Intelligence briefings had emphasized the strategic importance of these individuals, whose elimination could disrupt enemy operations throughout the region. As enemy search teams spread across the terrain, Rachel realized that her team's withdrawal would allow the enemy commanders to escape and continue coordinating attacks against American forces. The tactical retreat that would save her teammates would also preserve the enemy leadership that threatened broader coalition objectives. "Ghost, maintain formation and continue movement toward extraction," Morrison ordered, noting that Rachel had slowed her pace and appeared to be studying the enemy compound rather than focusing on withdrawal procedure. Rachel's response came after a moment's hesitation that suggested internal conflict between following orders and pursuing strategic objectives. "Roger, command, continuing movement." But Rachel wasn't continuing movement toward extraction. She was calculating attack routes that would allow her to reach the enemy compound while her teammates' withdrawal created diversion that might provide tactical opportunity for solo assault operation. Her decision violated every principle of team cohesion and command structure that defined SEAL operation. Individual initiative was valued, but not when it compromised unit integrity and placed team members at additional risk through unauthorized actions that commanders couldn't support or control. Rachel understood the implications of her decision. Disobeying direct orders during combat operations would result in court-martial proceedings that would end her military career and potentially result in imprisonment. But she also understood that allowing enemy commanders to escape would result in American casualties that could be prevented through action that only she was positioned to take. The enemy compound sat in a valley approximately 800 meters from the SEAL team's current position. Terrain features provided concealed approach routes, but the facility's defensive positions were designed to prevent exactly the kind of assault that Rachel was contemplating. Intelligence estimates suggested 47 enemy personnel in the compound, including the 2 generals, their security details, and support staff. Rachel would be engaging superior numbers with limited ammunition and no possibility of reinforcement or extraction if her assault failed. Standard military doctrine considered such operations suicide missions that violated basic principles of force protection and tactical employment. But Rachel's training in unconventional warfare and her experience in similar high-risk operations suggested that success was possible if properly executed. Her equipment loadout included specialized weapons and explosive devices that could provide tactical advantages against numerically superior forces. More importantly, her psychological profile and combat experience had prepared her for operations that required absolute commitment and willingness to accept casualties in pursuit of strategic objectives. "Command, this is Ghost," Rachel transmitted as her teammates continued their withdrawal. "Request permission to conduct solo reconnaissance of enemy command facility." Morrison's response was immediate and emphatic. "Negative, Ghost. You will maintain unit integrity and continue withdrawal. That's a direct order." Rachel keyed her radio one final time. "Copy, Command." But instead of following her teammates toward extraction point Bravo, Rachel began moving toward the enemy compound using terrain features that would conceal her approach while providing tactical advantages for the assault she was planning. Her movement was methodical and precise, incorporating advanced infiltration techniques that allowed her to cover ground quickly while avoiding detection by enemy search teams that were focusing their efforts on tracking the main SEAL element. Rachel's approach to the compound took 23 minutes, during which she conducted detailed reconnaissance of defensive positions, guard rotations, and facility layout that would inform her assault planning. The intelligence she gathered confirmed her initial assessment of enemy strength and defensive capability. The compound consisted of 3 main buildings arranged around a central courtyard, with guard positions that provided overlapping fields of fire and communication systems that allowed rapid coordination of defensive responses. The 2 generals were located in the primary command building, surrounded by security personnel and support staff. Rachel's assault plan required eliminating perimeter security, breaching the command building, neutralizing the generals and their immediate security details, and destroying communication equipment that would prevent enemy forces from coordinating pursuit operations. The plan was tactically sound but logistically challenging. Success would require perfect execution of complex maneuvers under extreme time pressure, with no possibility of error or hesitation that could compromise the entire operation. Rachel initiated her assault at 0947 hours with elimination of 2 perimeter guards using suppressed weapons that prevented immediate alarm. Her movement through the compound's outer defenses was silent and efficient, utilizing cover and concealment that allowed her to reach the central courtyard undetected. The first explosive device detonated at the communications building, destroying equipment and creating confusion that drew security personnel away from their primary position. Rachel used the distraction to breach the command building through a secondary entrance that intelligence had identified during her surveillance. Her movement through the building was systematic and violent. Room-clearing procedures were executed with precision that reflected years of training in close-quarters combat, with each engagement eliminating threats while preserving momentum that was essential for mission success. The first general was located in a conference room coordinating with subordinate commanders when Rachel breached the door. Her engagement was immediate and decisive, eliminating the target and his security detail before they could respond to the threat that had appeared without warning. The second general attempted to escape through a rear exit, but encountered Rachel as she moved to secure the building's perimeter. The engagement was brief and conclusive, with Rachel eliminating both the general and his remaining security personnel using tactics that prevented organized resistance. The remaining enemy personnel in the compound responded to the assault with coordinated defensive actions that demonstrated professional training and combat experience. but their responses were reactive rather than proactive, allowing Rachel to maintain tactical initiative that kept them responding to her actions rather than implementing their own plan. Rachel's movement through the facility continued with methodical elimination of threats using weapons and explosives that created maximum psychological impact, while conserving ammunition for the extended engagement she anticipated. Her tactics were designed to create fear and confusion that would degrade enemy effectiveness. The compound's defensive positions began to collapse as Rachel eliminated key personnel and destroyed critical equipment. Enemy communications were disrupted, leadership was eliminated, and remaining personnel found themselves fighting an opponent who seemed to be everywhere at once. Rachel's final explosive device destroyed the compound's vehicle pool, eliminating enemy mobility and preventing pursuit operations that might threaten her extraction. The explosion also served as a signal to coalition forces monitoring the area that strategic objectives had been accomplished. The assault lasted 47 minutes from initiation to completion. When Rachel emerged from the compound, 47 enemy personnel were eliminated, including both generals and their entire command structure. Communication equipment was destroyed, vehicles were disabled, and the facility was rendered completely non-operational. Rachel's extraction was complicated by her unauthorized deviation from team withdrawal procedure. Her teammates had reached extraction point Bravo and were preparing for helicopter pickup when her final explosion indicated that someone had engaged the enemy compound independently. Morrison's radio traffic was a mixture of tactical coordination and personal concern for the team member who had disobeyed direct orders to conduct solo operations against impossible odds. Ghost, report your status and location for emergency extraction. Rachel's response came from coordinates that placed her at the destroyed enemy compound. Command, this is Ghost. Mission objectives complete. 47 enemy KIA, including both high-value targets. Request extraction from alternate location. The helicopter that extracted Rachel from the compound landing zone carried a team leader whose emotions mixed relief at her survival with anger at her disobedience of direct order. Morrison understood that Rachel's actions had achieved strategic objectives that would save American lives, but he also understood that she had violated fundamental principles of military discipline. Valdez, you disobeyed direct orders and conducted unauthorized solo operations that could have resulted in your death and compromised this entire mission, Morrison said during the flight back to base. Rachel's response reflected understanding of the consequences her actions would bring, combined with certainty that her decisions had been correct given the strategic situation they faced. Sir, I understand the implications of my action, but those generals would have escaped to continue operations against our forces. Someone had to eliminate that threat. Morrison studied Rachel with expressions that mixed professional assessment with personal respect for capabilities that exceeded normal human limits. Valdez, what you accomplished today was tactically impossible. 47 enemy personnel eliminated by one operator in less than an hour. How did you achieve results that should have required an entire platoon? Rachel's explanation reflected technical expertise and combat experience that few operators possessed. Sir, the assault plan utilized psychological warfare principles combined with systematic elimination of command and control capability. Enemy personnel were reacting to threats rather than implementing coordinated defense. The after-action review of Rachel's operation became a classified case study examined by special operations commanders throughout the military. Her tactical innovations and psychological warfare techniques were analyzed as examples of unconventional approaches that could achieve strategic objectives under circumstances where traditional methods were inadequate. Morrison's recommendation for Rachel's court-martial proceedings was complicated by the strategic significance of her unauthorized operation. Her disobedience of direct orders violated military law, but her results exceeded any reasonable expectations for mission success under impossible circumstances. The legal proceedings were ultimately dismissed when senior commanders recognized that Rachel's actions had prevented enemy operations that would have resulted in significant American casualty. Her tactical innovations were incorporated into advanced training programs, and her psychological warfare techniques became standard doctrine for similar operations. Rachel's military career continued with assignments to the most classified operations that required capabilities exceeding normal special operations parameters. Her willingness to accept personal risk for strategic objectives made her invaluable for missions that other operators couldn't accomplish. Morrison continued leading SEAL operations with new appreciation for subordinates whose capabilities exceeded their commander's understanding. Rachel's operation taught him that sometimes the most successful missions required allowing exceptional individuals to operate beyond traditional constraints. The enemy generals whose elimination Rachel accomplished
never coordinated another operation against American forces. Their deaths disrupted command structures throughout the region and contributed to strategic victories that saved hundreds of coalition lives over the following months. Rachel's call sign Ghost became legend among special operations personnel who understood that some warriors operated beyond normal human limitations when strategic objectives demanded extraordinary measures. Her story proved that sometimes retreat was just the beginning of victory. The SEAL team that had been ordered to withdraw learned that tactical retreat could provide strategic opportunity when properly exploited by individuals with capabilities and determination to turn impossible odds into inevitable success. Lieutenant Commander Morrison learned that 12 years of experience meant nothing when faced with subordinates whose abilities challenged every assumption about human limits and the difference between following orders and achieving objectives that orders couldn't anticipate. The operation that began with retreat orders ended with strategic victory that redefined special operations doctrine and proved that sometimes the most successful missions begin when someone refuses to accept that success is impossible. Rachel Valdez didn't just disobey orders that day. She proved that some warriors carry capabilities that transcend traditional military constraints when strategic objectives demand actions that conventional doctrine cannot envision or support. The retreat that should have saved 8 SEALs became the beginning of a solo assault that eliminated 47 enemies and changed the course of regional conflict. Because sometimes tactical withdrawal is just the first phase of strategic victory that requires individual courage to complete what team operations cannot achieve.